The war in Ukraine is regularly described as static, with Ukrainian and Russian forces holed up in trenches under constant drone attacks and artillery fire. That is a big part of this fight, no doubt, but it misses the near constant, smaller, very intense firefights that are taking place at close range on a regular basis. I'm talking about the QRF teams that are sent to the hottest spot along the front at a moment's notice, like the 12th Special Forces Brigade, Azov. These are the small, elite assault groups that push into enemy territory to alleviate the pressure on Ukrainian positions or eliminate Russian forces that thought they'd broken through. Today, we're talking with two American volunteers in the Azov International Battalion doing this incredible work. Uno from Southern California is an assault platoon commander, and Vegas from Reno, Nevada, a combat medic. We get into the background on this relatively new Azov International Battalion, how a QRF is utilized in this war, the types of unique missions they're given, and more. Now, this interview is part of an ongoing fundraiser we have with the International Battalion, where we're helping them pick up night vision devices, thermals, comms equipment, and drones so that they have what they need to carry out these incredibly risky operations. For those interested and able, the link to contribute is in the description below, and with that, let's get to the conversation. All right, Uno, Vegas, thank you guys so much for taking the time. A lot to dig through here. I did do a little bit of a background kind of with some of your teammates. They gave me some ideas of things to talk about and things to cover. So, Uno, starting with you, just how does it feel being the first openly gay Marine to serve in Azov International?
That is so fucked up. That is so fucked up.
Was I not supposed to? He made it seem like you were too humble and you were trailblazing.
That's hilarious.
I need that. That is so funny.
That is actually, y'all are fucked for that. That is very funny. I'm not gay, but that's hilarious. That is okay.
I'll have to check the source there. That was kind of the whole premise of this conversation. I had a lot of things, so we'll see if we can salvage this, I guess.
That's night hitting me back. That's exactly what that is.
I can't release the source on that, unfortunately. But
that is very, very, very funny.
That is funny.
I'm gay in the infantry way, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
We'll have to see if there's anything else we can talk about here. For starters, Azov International seems relatively new. Like, I feel like I haven't heard about this group a lot before, and all of a sudden you got your own website, you got your own patch. What's going on? Tell me a little bit about your unit.
Yeah, it did. It exploded, really. Azov's never really had this large of a group of foreigners before. Occasionally they've had a couple of foreigners kind of trickle into some of the Ukrainian battalions. But it really started out as just a bunch of foreigners who had been in different units here in Ukraine. I came from the Legion. He came from GUR. We had a few different people that came from different units, and we were kind of in country looking for an opportunity. And it just happened to be that we met with our battalion commander now, Carl, and he was looking to start an international battalion. And we're like, hey, there's really no flag we would prefer to fight under at the moment. And that's kind of how it started. So we jumped into that. And then once word got out that Azov was now accepting foreigners at large, or not at large, but like in larger groups en masse, people started flowing in. It's really cool to watch.
Why Azov? For each of you guys, for the people that come in, because it's this different aspect with what I think most of us are used to in the West, where like you sign up for the Army and they tell you like you're going to the 82nd or 1st Cav or who knows, right? They're just going to tell you where to go. You guys get to, or you have at least, you've chosen the unit that you want to be a part of.
So I think it's more akin to like the British, how the UK runs theirs, where the guys can like sign up for certain regiments and whatnot, depending on where they live. I'm not totally privy to all that, but I've heard a little bit about it from my friends from the UK. But there's a name with Azov, and I don't mean like politics or anything. There's anybody who's fought here has seen their effect on the front line and their level of professionalism, and anybody who's fought here in vicinity of them has seen it. And like they've always been known, like especially as foreigners, where we're bouncing, like different units. Like dudes are in the ZSU, guys are in Gore, guys are in the Legion, wherever foreigners end up, and all sorts of different units. There's hundreds. You always know that, like, of the Ukrainian units, they're the best. They're the most professional. When they come down, like, sectors don't get given up. When they do a push, things get pushed. Like, they work. And so when they kind of opened up to everybody, it was an instant, like, that's where I want to be. This is going to be something that's the most familiar to me. And it is. It's structured, and the culture is very similar and very reminiscent of, like, the Marines and my time there. So it's something that I naturally gravitated towards. And many of my peers as well. Lots of guys that I fought with in other units or worked with in the U.S. have slowly started to, like, trickle in, and it's working, I think.
Yeah, I agree. There's this maybe in 2022, 2023, there was this common misconception that the only home for foreign fighters was the International Legion at the time. And then with the exception of a couple of brigades that were also accepting a couple here and there. So you know about the Legion, we know about the Legion. I don't want to disparage anybody here, but it wasn't ideal for foreigners. And so when these other foreigners in country heard about Azov, it wasn't hard to convince them to come over. They were like, here, I'm going to break my contract with these guys. I want to come to you guys. And some of them were with decent brigades. But like Uno said, Azov has that reputation here. And for anybody who's been in Ukraine for longer than a week, they've seen a billboard. They've seen it spray painted on the side of a wall. You know about Azov here.
No, it's also very surprising to me is the inflow we get of recruits from out of country who have not fought in Ukraine. Prior military guys, a lot of them, some of them know, but like the amount of people who've been following the war, if you've followed this war at all, especially since 2014, and like, you know about Azov, you know about Azovstal, you've heard of them and the rebuilding of then the regiment, now the brigade, now the corps, like you've seen it and you've heard the name because they are as effective as they are. So now that they're open to foreigners and it's gone like public with that, like guys who wanted to come maybe earlier in the war but had heard horror stories about the Legion or about other units, they saw this as their chance and they jumped on it. And so we've gotten an incredible mix of human beings here.
So I should add that we'll have the link to your guys' website in the description below alongside the fundraiser to try to get these guys some additional nods, thermals, comms, drones, all that stuff. So head down there if you're still watching. But we got to address the elephant in the room. Vegas, YouTuber. Yes. You get mentioned in like every video that I ever mention Azov. It's like, yeah, I watch Vegas's channel. It seems like I had heard that there's a shocking amount of recruiting that comes through the work that you do on YouTube. Is that fair to say?
It is. I've been blown away by it, to be honest with you. I started my channel after I left the International Legion later in 2023, and just to talk about things and have a place for people who want to come to Ukraine, to have someone to listen to and learn about the Legion, because I didn't have that when I came and joined the Legion. So I thought, I'm going to start that channel. Fast forward some time, now I can, instead of telling people, hey, maybe do your research on other units, now I can actually recommend Azov because that's who I'm with. It's who I've fought with. It's been pretty incredible. So my channel, it's definitely a smaller channel, but it's very specific viewer demographic, and it currently makes up a large percentage of our recruitment. And it was not the intention initially, but it's very cool that it's turned out that way now.
Powerful, man. And I do want to we're going to get into some of the tactics and kind of how you guys operate as a QRF. But one thing I'm interested in both of your takes on this. In Vegas, I know you deal with this on YouTube, but there's this interesting dynamic where when you say Azov, anybody that's in Ukraine right now thinks of you guys as a lethal fighting organization, and that's that. Anybody in Russia that's been following the war thinks of you guys as the professionals there, right? The actual ones involved in the conflict. Again, a lethal organization. But there's this subset of people who I don't think are really following the conflict at all. They hear Azov, they hear Nazi. It's exhausting, and it has been hammered by Russian propaganda for a long time. How did that play in when you were actively choosing this organization? Because that had to be back of mind somehow, right?
I actually reached out to a friend of mine who works in the U.S. government and was like, "It's all good, like everything's cleared." And they're like, "Yeah, you're fine." I was like, "All right, cool, done." And that was the biggest thing, is I got like the go ahead from like internal federal law enforcement in the U.S. And I was like, "Everything's fine, like they're clear, everything's good." And they're like, "Yep, totally fine." Just because I didn't want. I didn't want anything like negative to come back, but like the U.S. government recognizes Azov as just another professional unit within the Ukrainian military, and any kind of political affiliation with anything negative kind of split ways back in the mid early 2010s when the brigade split, and or when the battalion then split, and that kind of lost all connection with that, and the U.S. has approved it as just a normal unit. So anybody who's still clinging on to something that's 10 years old, is a decade old now, a concept that's that old, it is literally just a coping mechanism, some kind of propaganda tool.
Yeah, Russia. That's one thing Russia has gotten right, is their propaganda, and it has taken years for Azov to just kind of try to fight back this Nazi claim ideology. So I'm Jewish, right? My grandma.
It's not supposed to work, man. I have heard that is not. Yeah.
Right. My grandma was in one of Stalin's work camps when she was fleeing Poland in World War II. So like I'm almost as far as percentages go, I have a lot of Jewish blood. So it was something that was on the top of my radar when I first came into Azov, and I did my due diligence and read up on it. And there's a lot of cool different websites that Azov media team has put out now that is like break the fake type of deal, where it will debunk a lot of these rumors and this drama. So I did that, and I felt great about it. I have never been treated any different for being Jewish. I have a big Star of David tattoo on my shoulder, and I'll walk into headquarters in a tank top, right? No, it's not a thing here, right? So we've got people of all colors,
all shapes, sizes,
all
colors.
shapes, sizes.
I know, that's how we started the interview with Una. Yeah,
Yes, exactly. Okay. All colors.
that's cool. It's frustrating that we have to. I feel like it's still worth addressing, kind of taking head on every so often, but it's frustrating that somehow that is still, it's a chain around Azov. It's frustrating. So I'm frustrated. I can't imagine how you guys feel, but digging into how you guys have been operating, it seems like you've been more of a QRF, or a quick reaction force, for a while now. Is that a fair assessment? And then what does that look like in this war? Because most of the people that we've interacted with have been relatively static along the front.
So, if you don't mind, I can break that down.
So,
strategically, at like an operational strategic level, it's been much more QRF-esque. At the tactical level, we're assaulters. My boys that are out there, and the first company that was recently engaged in Donetsk, they're assault units, and that's what they do. But at an operational level, we've been employed in the areas primarily on the flanks of the brigade that have seen the most struggle with our partner forces, where they've been struggling the most. And generally what that looks like is these little probing elements will get through, and they'll get behind the line, and they'll create a huge logistical concern for our neighboring brigades. And because of that, the flank starts to weaken and crumble. And obviously encirclement's not good. So we'd like to try and hold our flank. So 3rd Battalion, at least in our experience, we get sent in, and then we'll start conducting assaults on these isolated pockets of enemies that have ended up behind our frontline positions. And that's most of the time how we get employed. And the guys love it because we get to see like a real effect on the front line. I remember on our last deployment, we created a section of front line. So we went through and we cleared the Russians out that had been preventing the Ukrainians that were on those positions from rotating for over 2 months. They'd just been stuck there getting drone dropped water. And they had wounded, they were tired. Like these guys hadn't been able to go home and see their families. They haven't been able to rotate and get R&R or anything, any rest for 2 months. And if you're on the zero line, like, like rest is not something that's given out. You can't find it. It's not there. So, they're beyond tired, and that only weakens the line. When you're tired, you become complacent, or you stop putting as much effort in monitoring your sector or doing whatever you can. And because now there's Russians on every side of them, these guys are worried. So they're like keeping their head down in their hole more, and only more getting through. So it creates a huge problem. So we had the opportunity and the tasking of going through, snuffing out these Russian positions, eliminating the Russians there, clearing a path all the way to these guys, making sure they got rotated and placing fresh troops, finding new positions and placing infantry in those positions to strengthen the line. And then we move on to the next area that needs work. And it was very fruitful because the guys feel like they're helping. We legitimately are helping the front line. It's not like, I don't know, I feel like work in some other places in this country is super unsatisfying. You just feel like you're just going to a place just to be there and get shelled. And for this, like, you can see the effect of your work on deep state, and see it in the faces of guys you're helping bring back and doing all this. And it is high risk, but it's high reward. And it's an aggressive work tempo, but I think the guys enjoy it.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. The feeling is incredible when we have a tasking like this one that he's mentioning, and we're walking past some of the Ukrainian units who have been stuck for a couple of months. And we're walking past these guys towards the Russians, towards the danger zone. And they're looking, they're in their holes and they're looking at us walk by like we're some kind of superheroes, because we're going there to eliminate the threat so they can go home. So it's like Uno said, it's a much different feeling than like in the Legion. I was sitting in a hole. Exactly. We would get shelled. That wasn't very satisfying, but being able to actually see these guys who you're helping, they're so grateful. They'll do anything for you. We came back from an assault in that general area out of water, and these guys were giving us the last of their water, the last of their food. They're like, whatever you want. So, it's amazing. They're true brothers in arms for sure.
Now, it seems like people could debate the pros and cons of when you're sitting in a static position, you do get to know the area pretty well. Unfortunately, you're under shell fire and drone strikes nonstop all day. You guys aren't sitting in that foxhole, but you are stepping into an area that you probably don't know, or at least you haven't been before. What does that look like in terms of the intel you're gathering before versus on the ground? Does it usually match up? Is it night and day?
So it can depend, because we've worked in multiple AOs now, because once we solve a problem, they plug us in somewhere else and they're just like, all right, do this. And our tasking comes pretty rapidly. And so it can be very bad. It can be very good. We do have times where we'll sit in static QRF positions where we'll put one of our assault teams a little bit behind the line. That way, if anybody comes through, they'll be there we'll be rotating teams into one of these positions for a month or two. And whenever those little pockets of Russian probes do get through and they set into a hole, we snuff it out before it can become like a larger issue. So in those cases, we really do get to know the area. It becomes like home. We start dominating it. We start owning it. But in other tasks where it's just been like a shotgun, like these dudes in this general area need to die like immediately. They're causing a big problem. We go in there. We oftentimes I find myself with my commander, and we're going to other brigades who are local in this area. We're conducting like more or less like interviews. We're getting debriefed by them. We go to all the local units. We collect all the intelligence they have. We talk to our partners. If Azov has also been working in this AO, one of the other battalions, one of the other teams, we talk to all of them. We do our own drone reconnaissance, ground reconnaissance if we can, and we gather every piece of intelligence we can about this before we walk in. Usually, largely, that comes, reliably or not, that comes from the other brigades who may own this portion of the front. And we just go to their headquarters, we talk with them, talk it out, see what they know, see what they've been experiencing, build as complete picture as we can. And then when we have all the information, we're satisfied and we feel like this can be done without losing anybody, we go.
The pre-mission planning and intelligence is, I think, one of the things that sets our brigade aside from others. It's taken extremely seriously. Like if we have so much surveillance that typically that if there is a door open that was not open yesterday before we go on to a mission, hey, we need to slow down, figure out why that door is open. That we could see specific mines, we can see very specific things. So it completely changes the game having surveillance like that, but being able to employ it or deploy it like Azov does is a game changer.
It sounds very similar to the soft raids in Global War on Terror, where it's that level of resources. I mean, I got it, apples to oranges, but right. in terms of having maybe more available than, I was an artillery guy. Like, so we were just out there conventional. So like we got nice stuff, I think, but compared to when like the special operations dudes would come in, they had all of the information. They knew exactly like which door to go in and which wall was real or fake. And it sounds a little bit like that.
I think we here probably have something much more akin to what you had in Afghanistan as far as information, assets, and support goes. But as compared to our neighbors and what can be expected in this conflict, it is the equivalent. It's their equivalent of that soft-esque, cordoning all the info, coming in the night and do something. Like we specialize in raids and small unit tactics. That's what our unit does. All right, we say assaults, but we don't assault and keep. Like we do raids. So we hit it, we leave, and then somebody else will in place, and sometimes we assist them. But like it is small unit tactics, raid style tactics, and that's what we're privy to. And we do receive a lot of support from the brigade. There's a couple of sayings, like for my friends who work in maybe they work in intelligence within GOR, within the Directorate of Intelligence for Ukraine, within their legion. There are some other units. Some of my friends who might be in the SSO. Those smaller units, they attach the brigades. And they have small tasks within that brigade's tasking, and they'll assist them, and they do their thing, and it's good, and it can be very productive. But when you're in a brigade, you have brigade level fights, but you also have brigade level support. So it can. Sometimes when you got 6 155s working for you, a mortar team, you've got 3 drone teams attached, FPVs, reconnaissance, maybe heavy drones, and there's a Leopard firing rounds in support of you from somewhere. Like you do, it almost becomes, you got drones knocking out other drones everywhere you go. You've got the enemies getting chased back with FPVs and artillery, and you're just kind of like, oh, okay. Or like we had an instance where, and this is the only time I've seen this in Ukraine, and I think it's 100% because I'm now in Azov, but like we got into a little bit of a scrap. Russian reconnaissance unit tried to ambush us in a place we didn't really expect contact. I mean, we were prepared for it, and we knew it could be there, but we hadn't gone looking for it. And they fixed us into an L-shaped ambush. And it was immediate. I had a PKM at the time. I had a radio in the other hand, and I started doing call for fires. And mortars and artillery came. And now for an infantryman in eastern Ukraine to call for fire, and then suddenly cluster munitions are hitting tree lines and 155s are screaming overhead, and you got 120s walking down the tree line to my left. I was like, whoa, like that is unheard of. So you do feel like you have like the hammer of dawn. You're bringing down like it changes the game when you have that support from like a brigade, and especially one that works as fluidly as this one. It totally changes how this works.
That was incredible to watch.
Vegas was on that mission as well.
And being able to, again, I have to reference the Legion because it's my only other experience. But you don't, when you're on a mission, you feel very much alone. After seeing that on that mission, you really get this sense of support. There was another one that we were on where there was a mechanized assault of a couple BMPs that came up. And the drone units in our village smashed it with something like it was like 60 something FPVs. It was absurd.
It was very unfortunate for the Russian dismounts. They got hit before the BMP stopped. They'd hit mines. They got hit by like 6-8 FPVs. They got hit by an RPG in the ribs. The gun, like the autoloader started cooking off and the gun was just fitting. And then it came to a stop, open the door, drone drop right in front of the door. They crawl out, they start running immediate 120s. And they were it was over in like 7 seconds. Yeah. It was like first round impact, 120 hit directly in the middle of them as they're dismounting. It was done. And it was like they never, like the support was there and they didn't even stand a chance. It was a bad day for them. It was a horrible day for them. But like to see that kind of support when you're here in Ukraine, like fighting on this side of the war, it doesn't really exist. And often cases, like my background is a little different than Vegas's. I worked in intelligence, and the missions we did there were much more DRG-esque. And it's a lot of behind the lines, unsupported, like direct action and like the Russians like to call it sabotage, but for us it's just direct action, but behind enemy lines. And there's no support. Drones, mortars, Kazovac, anything. Like you're out there on your own because of where you are. So to be here and in the red and less of the gray, but like getting support on call it's pretty insane. Especially like if we have a casualty or anything like that, the brigade is absolutely willing to support us. So like during times where we've had to maybe evacuate a casualty, Brigade EW comes on, drones clear the sky. We've got our drones working on their drones, using systems that we have to knock out their drones. So they're losing like 15. If you lose 15 Mavic Pros in a day, that might be 3 drone positions that are not operable for another 2 weeks. They might take 2 weeks. So now they're flying in drones from other AOs to try and take a look at what we're doing. And that means that they're lower on battery. They're taking their eyes off their sector of the front, and it creates a whole problem for the enemy. Now I've got brigade artillery working on counter batteries, snuffing out their mortars. Maybe we even damage or destroy their gun or their ammunition, knock it out totally. Regardless, they're not hitting me. And the Kazovac, though not easy, becomes possible, which in a lot of places on this front line, it just isn't. Yeah. And they've done as much as like to dispatch friendly infantry to come assist us in like 10, 15 kilometer Kazovacs trying to grab our boy and save his life. And I've got friendly Ukrainian infantry just pouring out of a tree line, like, and they take him up the hill, like it's stuff like that. Like it's which, like I said, in this war, it's totally unheard of just because it breaches the capabilities of most units.
Yes.
It sounds like a lot of, to take it in a more boring direction for folks here, that's planning, man. Like what you're describing, I feel like a lot of people come into this and they think you just grab it, maybe especially at the beginning of the war, and maybe this played out in some places, but you come over to Ukraine, you pick up an AK or an M4 and you go fight. What you're describing is very quick, detailed, intricate planning. Can you walk through like when you get a mission, hypothetical or one in the past, what does that planning process look like?
You want me to take this one?
Yeah, this is what he does. So yeah.
So generally we'll get like a mission tasking. So we'll get brought in and we'll take a look at the board and they'll be like, all right, bad dude's here, friendly's here, commander's intent, situation. Then me and my boss will go build a 5-paragraph order. We use like full NATO MDMP. We break it down completely. So we'll go through systematically. All right, commander's intent, enemy's intent, full situation orientation, everything, friendly positions, everything, adjacent units, assets available, and then we'll start to build our phase plan and our trigger plan, and then we brief it to our teams. So we'll have our phase plan lined out. So, I mean, how a phase plan works, but for viewers, the phase plan is you essentially take the entire mission start to finish from when you wake up in the morning, the day that you go, to when you're getting dinner at W Burger, the day you get back. And you start you cut it into bite-sized chunks. Phase 1 starts with this and it ends with this. And the reason that you do that is in case there's any variance in between, in case anything changes, they know what the end state is of that phase before they can start the next one. And that also helps if like my commander walks into the operations room and I'm controlling and he's like, all right, where are we at? Phase 3. He knows that somewhere in between this start and this finish, the boys are in there, and what location that means they're probably at, what task it means they're probably doing. It helps us control everything. And then we'll set up fires and trigger plans. So, you get to the end of phase 3 and you're about to cross into phase 4. Maybe the condition set for phase 4 is artillery has to smash this tree line. Okay, like all of us have made mistakes in the past and we've learned from them. So we know that we wait at the trigger line for phase 4 until that artillery hits. Because the artillery, they've got their own considerations. They've got their own thing going on. There might be a Lancet drone that's just waiting for one of those guns to fire. So they have to wait that out. They might not always be there on call, but they'll be there when they're ready. So we wait until they're ready, and then boom, those rounds start impacting, and we trip phase 4 and we go. So we try and run it as close to NATO MDMP and NATO planning as possible.
It saves lives. I've seen it firsthand. It absolutely saves lives. It's very cool to watch. That level of planning and strategy is over my head, right? And being able to watch someone like Uno who understands it really well, and then we go implement it in the field, and seeing how well it works, how well we mitigated certain risks, took no casualties. It's very cool to see how important and see these this planning play out and it works so well.
Now that it goes without saying, I think, but maybe some people need to hear it. That doesn't mean it's perfect. All right. Well, one rule that I have that I always like to say is the Russians get a say too. Any plan I make, any plan my commander makes is as smart as he is. He's much smarter than I am, and we hit this together. The Russians also get a say. So that's not to say nobody will get hurt. That's not to say nobody will get killed, and that's not to say that the plan is going to have to differ left, differ right. We're going to have to deviate sometimes. But a lot of people, I think, have adopted this mentality of because no plan survives first contact, that like you should create a more loose plan. I prefer, though I do like giving my leaders on the ground the ability to move and breathe and kind of make their own decisions, and I always leave it at their discretion. I prefer to overplan. So if I've got, like a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like maybe plan A and B are totally impossible. They're out the window, but we're close to plan F and we can roll into that and everybody knows. And I also think it's super important that everybody knows what the end state is. All right. They know what the commander's intent is. That way, if we do have to deviate, they know that they can maybe achieve that goal by other means. And I think that's something that gets overlooked, especially in this part of the world. And a lot in this conflict, but it's the proof is in the pudding, like it works. So it's something that everybody, I think, should try and implement whenever possible.
Agreed.
You guys are in a different spot than the Ukrainians when this war finishes. They're going back home, right? They're bringing their families back home, and maybe there's some family abroad, or they're moving back to, maybe they're going to start helping to rebuild portions in the East. Your unit being international, what are your guys' plans when this ends? If this ends, is that something anybody thinks about? What do those conversations look like?
Yeah. So there's a lot of plans in the works for Azov specifically. I don't know, to be honest with you, how much of it that I can share, but there is absolutely strategies and plans in motion for when this is over and for the future of Azov Corps now, and specifically Azov's International Battalion. I know for me, this is Ukraine's home now. I may visit the U.S., but I live here permanently now. I brought my cats from the U.S.
That locked it in. You got the cats.
That locks it in. If you bring the pets, you're done. So I'm staying here, and so I'm definitely invested in this, and I'm excited about the future to come as well. Especially, I have to reference the Legion again. There was no in my head no future with the Legion. You have an expiration date typically there. That's not the case here. So it's cool to have it's exciting to know there's stuff to come.
I think that, and a lot of people need to hear this, so I'm going to say it. When this ends, it's not over. It's going to kickstart again. As soon as the ceasefire is called and gets approved and everybody lays down their rifles, it's just a timer, and that timer's ticking until somebody crosses that line again, and until this escalates. So I think the Russians try again. So it's not over, and there would be, and I think, or at least our leaders recognize that we're just in our prep time, and we're lucky enough to have the opportunity to prepare this time. So I hope that nobody forgets that and is like, oh, it's over, I can be done. It's like, you're not done. You can rest, refit, prepare new recruits, get new weapons, and you can actually be prepared the next time they cross that line. As opposed to like in 2022 when everybody was kind of caught off guard. They reacted well, but it would have been better if they had expected this fully. And I think when this conflict ends in victory, whatever that may look like, that we have to recognize and understand that it's coming back. There's work to be done in the meantime, and there's nobody should just be like kicking off the boots and be like, we're done. Like, we can go to Kyiv and party it out and have fun, but we come back to work Monday and now we're in our prep time. And I think that's important.
Well, we'll wrap there. Uno, Vegas, thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk through all this. As we mentioned before, we've got in the description and pinned comment, fundraiser, help these guys pick up some additional kit, thermals, night vision goggles, we got commo equipment, drones, and more. The link to the International Battalion's website is there. Vegas's YouTube channel will be linked there as well. Gentlemen, really appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for taking the time to talk like this to help more people understand not just about your unit and the brigade and the corps, but the war in general and how it's actually playing out. This is really important stuff.
We're grateful to do it, and I think the work that you do, being able to share this information, the actual reality of it from people who are on the ground fighting and doing this, it's underestimated, and it's what should be the regular, it should be the norm, but it's not. So grateful for what you do, and thank you for having us.
It's super awesome to be here. I've been watching you for a long time, so this is pretty weird. I don't mean to have like a fangirl moment, but it's a thing. But at the same time, like, this is largely a propaganda war. And that portion of the war, that fifth dimensional psychological warfare is a front I think we are losing on. No matter how good we do in the East, it doesn't matter if everybody's opinion is otherwise. The image that you project is perceived as reality very often. So it's awesome when and I'm not saying we're going to take Moscow by spring. That's not what I'm saying. But it is important that people see and hear these things. And I just want to thank you for assisting us in that.
Man, happy to do what little I can, but be safe out there, guys, and we'll stay in touch.
Of course.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So thank you again so much to Uno and Vegas for taking the time to walk through all of that. Every conversation with guys like this, it's always something new. I'm learning something every single time, a lot. It's important, and I hope you are too. And I'm so glad they took the time out of their day, incredibly busy, to be able to walk through some of what they're doing. Again, linked in the description below, of course, Vegas's YouTube channel. No doubt, check that out. We've got the link to the International Battalion in Azov if you want to learn more about the organization. And then the fundraiser that we have for these guys right now, drones, thermals, comms equipment, night vision devices, and more to help them carry out these operations. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.